All right. Thank you. So, welcome, distinguished guests, and those who will view us on YouTube. I'm Christian Kwame Agbodza. I'm the chair of the Continental Study Group, which is CSG. It is a privilege to welcome you into this important discussion on the African Continental Free Trade Area. As we gather online today on a technology that wasn't there when our leaders fought for the unification of Africa, let us reflect on the powerful words of Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Quote, "No sporadic acts, no pious resolution can resolve our present problems. Nothing will be of avail except the united act of a united Africa." Let's be clear on that. Anything else we are doing before we unite Africa are just comedies, a waste of time by conservative and liberal leaders who are only thinking about themselves and their private families. They're not thinking about the family of Africa as a whole. An Africa of ordinary men and women whose welfare should be the supreme law on the continent, but isn't, as we meet. This call for unity resonates deeply as we explore the transformative potential of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is meant to foster economic integration across Africa, our homeland, because it is our homeland. The African Free Trade Continental Area is not merely a trade agreement. It is a bold step towards realizing Nkrumah's vision. And if I might add, Nkrumah and the Pan-African fathers and mothers, their vision of a prosperous and self-reliant Africa. Because by eliminating trade barriers and promoting intra-African commerce, we can unlock unprecedented opportunities for growth and development. So together, let us engage in meaningful dialogue today, this evening, this afternoon, this morning, wherever you are, about how we can harness the power of the African Continental Free Trade Area to build a united Africa that thrives economically and socially. So thank you for being part of this vital conversation as we hear from Brother Pigeon on behalf of the, I believe as he said, the office of ACFTA in Kenya. So, Brother Pigeon, let's hear from you. Before that, let's welcome Brother Williams, BN, Sir Windhoek, who is joining us from Namibia, Brother De King joining us from Ghana, Brother Kama joining us from Tanzania, Green and Kiwex, not sure where he or she's joining us from, Buhura into Kanyagwe Valence, not sure where he or she's joining us from, Amos Serumba, I'm just going by the names on the screen, and then Brother Pigeon. So welcome, brothers and sisters. Welcome once again to the Continental Study Group meeting on a Saturday, where we discuss politics, economics, development, and liberation, all centered around the unification of Africa, because that is the centrifugal point. Everything we discuss on Saturdays are meant to promote the unification of Africa. Thank you. Brother Pigeon,
thank you,
I believe you are ready to start.
Yeah,
are you going to share a screen, slides with us, or it's just a verbal presentation?
No, I will start with the video that I'd shared before.
Okay.
That goes for 5 minutes as introduction of the concept of Africa Free Trade Agreement, then I'll go to the presentation slides a bit.
Excellent. And I hope YouTube are not going to take us down because we are showing this video.
Oh, they won't.
I mean, we have copyright access, yeah, to have it on this recording. Is that correct?
Yeah, they won't. African Union contents are not actually of any corporate privilege.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Please proceed. So, brothers and sisters, let's hear Brother Pigeon.
We are calling on everybody to think Africa, act Africa, and prosper Africa.
It comes down to the change of mindset.
I think this is an opportunity which Africa should not miss.
We are implementing the Africa we want.
A lot of the countries understand that this is good for them, that it is a game changer.
This is an historic moment for our continent.
So this is entirely African driven. These African countries are making a treaty among themselves.
We've been brought up with so many borders. You know, we have our little countries, we have our little economies, our little sectors. We have so many things that divide us, and I think this is an opportunity to really push against those boundaries and to change them.
As the old adage goes, there is strength in unity. For the 55 African Union member states, that strength lies in numbers. With a population of 1.2 billion and a GDP of $2.5 trillion, the prospect and now realization of a continental free trade area for Africa promises to usher in a new era of industrialization and business opportunities towards the realization of Agenda 2063, the Africa we want.
It has been a long journey, difficult and long, but we had visionaries. When we created the Organization of African Unit in 1963, President Nkrumah of Ghana made a clarion call: Africa must unite. In June 2015, the heads of state and government had an assembly in Johannesburg, and they adopted the principles for negotiations, the roadmap, as well as the institutions. And we had several rounds of negotiations. Then the regional communities came in to give technical inputs with other strategic partners, namely the African Development Bank, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, and the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. And the initial good results were established in December 2017. Then in January, we gave the report to the heads of state and government, and they were very impressed. They said the remaining work can be done in a short time, so let's have a signing ceremony on 21st March 2018 in Kigali. And we were able to produce the consolidated text that was signed today. It's composed of the agreement establishing the African Continental Free Trade Area and the protocol on trade in goods, the protocol on trade in services, and the protocol on the settlement of disputes. And this is where we are.
The African Continental Free Trade
Pidgin, you'll have to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Yes, that's a brief history of where we've come from that I think was very important. But I'll also look at now, I'll go back to Nkrumah's speech on the need for this. Of course, the history has explained where we've come from, why that was needed, and all the process from 1963 to the first signing in 2018 in Kigali. So let me go back a bit to also read Nkrumah's thoughts initially as the foundation in 1963 when the Organization of African Union was founded. And there's an excerpt that I've just picked from one of the sites that did a WordPress on this. And what I want to read is the text below. Let me highlight specifically the text I want to read so that we can see. This is the text I want to read. And the text says that we must unite. It goes ahead to say, without necessarily sacrificing our sovereignty, but which is not key issue here, Nkrumah was forging for a political union, an African monetary system, a central bank as well. But he goes extra mile if you read down a bit, which I will be interested to the speech of Nkrumah. It talks about the economic basis and development. I think is what I'd also shared with many of us as an attachment to the invitation text that we were to meet today. So let me read that view. But I think we have it. I can even read it from my phone because I'd shared actually that text in regards to what Nkrumah said. Let me check you, brother. Brother, come here, able. But let me just check it from my side. Yeah, this is the text, the committee. Nkrumah proposed in his speech the Committee of Foreign Ministers. He proposed, let me highlight it here at the end of the sentence. He says that the Committee of Foreign Ministers, officials, and experts should be empowered to establish, one, a commission to frame a constitution for a union government of African states, a commission to work out a continent-wide plan for a unified or common economic and industrial program for Africa. This should include proposal of setting up a common market for Africa. This is where IFTCA coming in, an African currency, African monetary zone, African central bank, a continental communication system, a commission to draw up details for a common foreign policy and diplomacy, a commission to produce plan for common system of defense. But my key issue of concern is that proposal 2, which says a commission to work out continental wide plan for a unified or common economic and industrial program for Africa, which should then include a common market, which is now what we see today on AFTCM. Now in that line, I'll say that, of course, the journey has been there, and it's very unfortunate that it's now it has taken us up to 2018 from 1963. You can tell it's so many years. That's almost 50 something years. But nevertheless, there is actually an effort to make up the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. And people will be worrying, when we talk of political unification and now free trade agreement, which one should be prioritized? But as you can see, of course, there's a need to prioritize a free and common market for Africans. And that's what I'll be touching briefly. Of course, the part of the process of Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement has been explained briefly in the video that I played. I know most of us have also been actually been able to get in touch or to be aware of the agreement and some of the procedures that have been going on. As you'll see, many countries have ratified the agreement, and we'll read all the details of all the especially countries that have gone ahead and ratified the agreement. So let me share the slide in regards to the agreement. Now, this is actually a slide that was presented by one of my friends. His name is actually Jeffrey Odero. He works for the Ministry of Trade as the State Department for Trade. He's been part of the Secretariat of Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement. I might be able to update some few things in regards to the presentation, but I'll go ahead and just give the brief that is also covered here. I may need to make it to presentation mode, then I can be able to share some few. Yeah, so Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement. This was on status update on implementation of FTCA protocol on trades in goods. Remember, it covered three aspects: there's trade in goods and services as well. So these are SPS measures. Of course, what a friend was covering greatly, there are two aspects. There's a SPS, which is sanitary and phytosanitary measures, which deals with the food, health, and those other things. Then there's what you call TBT measures or TBT agreement, which is trade barrier, technical barriers to trade. Just at this particular moment, permit me to say that, of course, I do sit in the WTO National Committee in Kenya as just a full-time member, but on basis of various meetings that takes place as a representative in terms of policy and strategies. And we have two main committees. Of course, there are other committees under WTO, which is World Trade Organization, but there are two main committees that deals with trade. And these are what we call TBT committee, which is Technical Barriers to Trade Committee, that deals at issues to do with basic conformity assessment, standard, and technical regulations. Then there's a SPS committee in every aspect that deals with sanitary and phytosanitary measures. So things to do with the food, health, the all agricultural products, and either beef products, all those things goes under SPS. Now, this is a brief introduction that we want to give. The objective, of course, as to say, was to create a single continental market for 55 member states. And the trading actually started in January 2021. The total GDP actually cumulatively is up to around 3 trillion USD. A total population of this time is 1.2, but of course, we know current updates of African population is moving to almost 1.4. And of course, Africa has a diverse weather, natural resources, culture, labor, and other capacities. Now, all the agreement has been put here, which is the agreement establishing the AFTCA. The agreement includes the protocol on trade in goods, the protocol on trade in services, the protocol on rules and procedure of settlement of disputes, protocol on competition policy, protocol on intellectual property rights, and protocol on e-commerce. Because you know that we have e-commerce platform where Africans are trading in e-commerce, like, for example, Jumi in Africa. There must be protocols in intellectual property rights to preserve the intellectual properties of various traders. The protocol on competition policy must also be there, because you cannot have an open market without regulation of competition. So there must be regulation on competition. There must also be dispute every day. There are anywhere there's a trade, there must be dispute settlement and a dispute arising, and now trades in services. So here we have, of course, in trade in services, you have schedule for specific commitment. There's air transport services, list of priority sectors, because you have also to list priority sectors on where do you want to start trading on, and the framework document for regulatory corporations. If you look at trade and goods, you also have issues with tariffs, rules of origin, this custom cooperation and mutual agreements or mutual administration assistance. There's issues to do with trade facilitation. There's issues to do with non-tariff barriers. All this must be talked about and must be settled so that you have a common framework to administer trade. There are issues to do with sanitary and phytosanitary measures, as I explained. Transit, there's trade remedies, guideline implementations. Of course, as I've said, in dispute resolution, there are things to do with the working procedures of the panel, expert review, and code of conduct for arbitrators and panelists. So all these are part of the issues that have been going on. As you can see, at currently state of the play, is that we have 54 member states so far. And out of 54 member states who have signed the agreement, 43 have ratified the agreement. So they're signing the ratification of the agreement. And we have also 43 state parties. We have 36 initial tariff offers that have been technically verified and are certified by FTCS secretariats as having met the minimum threshold requirement of 90% of traffic lines, 87.8% of traffic lines that have also been upgraded upon under the review, under what you call our own negotiations, or covering more than 70% of intra-African trade. 12.2% of the tariffs lines are under negotiations and are yet to be agreed on. The issues to do with the automotives, how we want to trade automotives is at actually final stage of negotiations. There's also textile that has not been fully discussed, issues on how we trade on textiles, the issues of rules of origin, which is very important. Where is the product coming from? For example, if you are going to trade products from Africa, you have to put where is it originating, or do you have to have one continental mark? For example, you can say made in Kenya or made in Africa. So there's issues of rule of origin manual that has to be developed, still in the work of development. Other ongoing work includes special economic zones and infant industry regulations. Because if you have to do the trading as a continent, we need to develop special economic zones where we will get produce or products or goods and services that have to be traded, especially goods. The issues to do also the tariffs that need to be discussed and agreed on, e-tariffs, because we have to have e-tariffs to reduce the time wastage and to ensure that the trade is facilitated successfully. So these are part of the few issues that are still under review. So we have, as I've said, we have issues to do the NTBA. NTB is called non-tariff barriers. So there's a subcommittee that has been set to do the non-tariff barriers, and they are going to ahead to remove tariff barriers actually. And there's also online mechanism of reporting, monitoring, and eliminating non-tariff barriers that are in place. There are also private platform for private sectors to report NTBs. Then we have also technical barriers to trade, which is the TBT. So these actually include enhancing cooperation in areas of standard, technical regulations, conformity assessment, accreditation, metrology, elimination of unnecessary and justified TBT, transparency, mutual recognition, and capacity building. You need to have a common standard. For example, the EU market has a common standard for either various products and goods, and there's a standard body that regulates this. For example, they have issues to do with MRLs, and they have standards of various things. So there must be standards that must be developed on a common standard. For example, the standard of packaging. When you want to maybe export water from Kenya to another part of continent, what's the packaging mechanism? The clear example is between Kenya and Ethiopia. Ethiopia packaging is around, for example, in cement, Ethiopia don't package 90 kgs. I think they package 60 kgs. So if you're moving with a product from Kenya and you are exporting to Ethiopia and you are packing packages in Kenya is at 90, if you get to Ethiopia market, you cannot get it at 90, which means you have to unpack your product and pack it to their packing so that you use their 60 kg. And these are actually barriers to trade to various businessmen and women who are doing businesses. There are also what you call conformity assessment. For example, if a product has been approved from the route of origin or from the source, for example, Ghana might be having a standard body that deals with the standardizing or approving the standard of various products. If the products are coming from Ghana and they have been approved by the Ghana standard body, that approval must be recognized across the continent so that the product do not go another testing. Because if these products undergo another testing, it takes time to take another testing of the products. For example, you have a consignment coming from Ghana to Tanzania, then it also takes money because the testing again will not be done free. So the trade owner, the business owner will have to pay another money for accessing and for actually doing conformity assessment of that standard. So there's also agreement on the rules of origin so that you have a common standard across the continent, which if the good is tested and approved by that standard from the place of origin, it doesn't go again to be subjected on other accreditation or other conformity assessment as well. So those are things that are still being discussed as well. Or there's also, of course, it's called ARSO, which is Africa Organization for Standardization. Is actually located in Nairobi. This is now a continental body that will be regulating standards. Each country have their country bodies. For example, Kenya have Kenya Bureau of Standards. Other countries have their own Bureau of Standards. So ARSO is becoming then a continental body that will then regulate standards of and develop a common standard for all goods that are being traded across the continent. So the work is still going on in that department. We also have development that have been made in FTCA certification mark for the trades under the FTCA is underway. So we have one certification mark of trade. For example, you have maybe made in Kenya. So there's an FTCA mark that is being developed so that all product will bear the same mark. There's also TBT secretariat that is being set for FTCA, because each level of governance and each level, especially if it's at a continental level, realize that we need to have also a committee at continental level that oversees these things. For example, the TBT, which is the technical barriers to trade in Kenya, always check on issues that deal with the barriers or issues or proposals that are being raised by other countries that might cause barrier to trade. Because people might either want to increase the, maybe, for example, aflatoxin level, maybe people want to come up with policies on like now there's what they call GPRS, which is good regulatory practice. People are saying like the world now, the continental WTO and developing countries are saying that there must be what you call a map, GPRS map for where your location of your industry is located from where the product is originating. So if you have a farm, for example, that is doing maybe, for example, dragonfly or dragonfruit fly, you have to put that farm on a map so that when the product gets to UK or anywhere it wants to go to, they'll have to trace it directly in a GPRS to where the farm is. This is actually to ensure safety and authenticity of the product. So all these are things that must be regulated and must be looked at by the organizations that is TBT. For example, there are issues that maybe the US was raising the other time that they want to do with plastic packaging. So they don't want product getting to their country using plastic packaging, which means then you have to go to a modern packaging mechanism. And if a country, especially developing countries like countries in Africa, some of them are still depending on plastic. If that rule is approved and passed, it means you block the market for all these countries that could sell the product to that other country. So all these are issues that then the committees are looking at and looking into them deeply and critically so that they can be able to stop them or regulate them in advance. In phytosanitary measures, they also have to look at the same thing, issues to do with the safety of the products and everything else. So the secretariat will also have to be set that coordinate that phytosanitary and phytosanitary measures at a continental level. Then, of course, we have what's called FTCA Guided Trade Initiative. So some activities and piloting has been done. Facilitating commercial meaningful trading among interested parties has been done. And 8 pilot countries for this initiative that included, of course, Ghana, Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, Egypt, Cameroon, Tunisia, and Mauritius. 2 more have also been added that are in the piloting stage, and the trading began, as I say, in 26 September 2022, and official launch was done actually in 7th October 2022. There are also what you call Africa Continental Technical Regulation Framework. So those are also things that need to be worked on, which is ACTREF. Widely differing technical regulations can be the source of unnecessary trade barriers. So all regulations must be brought together and harmonized so that there's no barrier to trade, because if you have to open the market, regulations will still have to control the market. So all those technical regulations are being brought together, and there's a need for a regulatory framework guide that should support the implementation of African Continental Free Trade Agreement or Free Trade Area protocols on trading goods. So all these are also these issues of quality policy that must also be in place. What is the quality mark? So all these are also things that are on progress. The African Union Commission and the Pan-Africa Quality Infrastructure developed a concept paper on ACTREF in 2011, which was actually highlighting the relevant regulatory approaches in play in Africa. A technical working group or team of experts have also met twice to develop the ACTREF. The first meeting was in April 2022 in Nairobi, and second one in Addis Ababa the same 2022. So there are also issues that, of course, that happen within the piloting stage. Of course, the president of Kenya flagged off tea for export to Ghana and West Africa, And Kenya delegation have also held trade missions in West Africa, and plans are underway for other trade exhibition and trade missions. Few recommendations that are being put in place, that there's active participation of members in various subcommittees, because these are having subcommittees. In order to implement this policy, there must be subcommittees. So some countries fail to either participate actively, either by failing to send their members to the meeting. So there's a need for active participation in monitoring. Starting a trade is not the end. The monitoring, the evaluation, and implementation of trade is very important. So active participation in committee is very important. Need to analyze and document the tariff, SPS, TBT related market access requirement is also very needed. There are issues to support logistics, facilitation framework to set up trade in Africa, which reduce the cost. Issues like laboratory, upgrading laboratories, those are issues that are needed in order to realize what is needed. There's also need to collaborate with other countries to support their SPS and TBT implementation systems, and also convening national experts meetings. So basically, these are the few things that are in play here, and that's basically a brief of AFTCA according to this presentation. Thank you very much, members. Permit me to stop here.
Yeah. Yes, brother Pigeon. Thank you very much for the presentation on behalf of the African Free Trade Continental Area office in Kenya. Thank you very much. The time is just gone past 6:30. I think it'd be right for us to open the door for discussion. But before we do that, can I say that when anyone is building a house, there are always, at the end of the day, two aspects of building the house. There are the technical aspects of building the house, like the architectural drawings, resources that will be needed, those who will dig the foundation, and all those parts of building the house. So there is that part. And then there is the other part of consuming the services that the house provides, which means what the internal decorations will look like, who will live where in the building, the standard of life in that building, whether there will be access to fresh water, pipe-borne water, whatever water there is, the road in front of the house, to take children to school or parents to work, and so on and so forth. So there are two aspects of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which are the technical aspects, and then there are also what you might call the quality of life aspects. So when we are looking at the African Continental Free Trade Area, let's remember that both are important. And so what we have heard are the very important foundational technical aspects that are crucial in order for the African Free Trade Continental Free Trade Area, which is the African continent, to work. And so we are grateful for the work that they are doing. We are thankful to them. And this presentation has enlightened us on what has been happening to date and where we are going. So let's now move to the quality of life aspects of the whole project. Why is it that we want an African Continental Free Trade Area? Why did the Osagifo call for this? What does it mean for the ordinary African? Because the ordinary African currently is living on about approximately $5.50 a day. That is the ordinary African. And so if we have a free trade, an African Continental Free Trade Area, how will that change for the ordinary African? And I think it's fair to say that ordinary Africans, that is what they are interested in, or that is what they will also be interested in. That having built the house, how will it benefit me? And whenever economic issues come up, including the African continental free trade area, we hear not mentioned today, I must say, is poverty reduction, lower consumer prices, and things like that, which are all okay. But the Africa that we want as Africans is not an Africa where poverty is reduced. It's an insult to us Africans. It's an insult to us when our leaders, when they talk about African continental free trade area, they talk about poverty reduction in line with, if you like, current capitalist dominance of the world. When Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was talking about the continental free trade area, if we listen to what Brother Pigeon read, he was talking about an industrialized Africa. Because if we are not careful, all we will have is global corporations fighting it out in Africa, as they are currently doing, but in a different way. So that's all we will have. We will just have a whole market where big dogs just come and fight, and they leave the bones for us to chew, if some of us don't have even the teeth to chew bones, or we'll just have the crumbs which they will leave for us. That is not what we want. So the African continental free trade area, we are hearing about a lot of trade, but ultimately it should be about the setting up of industries across Africa and the creation of jobs for our people, and to give access to Africans to engage in wealth creation so that Africans will have wealth. Africans will own the wealth that currently is leaving the continent through a variety of ways, whether it is our gold being flown out as we are speaking by private individuals because they have some kind of licenses, gold that is ended up in Dubai and other places, whether it is aeroplanes landing in Congo and lifting our resources with the connivance of current institutions and so on and so forth. All this wealth does not benefit Africans. So we are not interested in poverty reduction when it comes to the African continental free trade area. We want wealth creation, and that means a new mindset. So I'm drawing our attention to this aspect of the African continental free trade area, because we don't want Chinese companies, American companies, British companies, German companies, and whatnot. Some of whom are already stealing our resources anyway. Kenya is an example. Look at the coffee being grown in Kenya. How has it benefited the ordinary persons in Kenya? The ordinary Kenyan people are not becoming millionaires out of coffee, even though the coffee is grown there. Those who are becoming millionaires are German companies, British companies, and so on. And we don't want the African continental free trade area to just be another park, fenced off for criminals to just come and fight on our soil, and then we then end up with nothing. So we don't want poverty reduction. That's not what we are interested in. And we don't just want employment. Africans are not just interested in employment. And we hear a lot about let's create employment for the youth. The youth are unemployed and so on. Well, the youth are unemployed because wealth is not being created by the youth. So the youth must have access to their own resources in order that they can create wealth. And when they create wealth, that way they create employment for themselves. So those are the things that I think we are interested in. There's a lot of untapped potential. Africa holds vast natural resources and a growing population, presenting immense opportunities for large-scale wealth creation. Entrepreneurial powerhouses like the Dangote family in Nigeria demonstrate how African entrepreneurs can build multi-billion-dollar empires spanning multiple industries and countries. We want high-growth sectors. Key wealth creation industries in Africa include high-tech, manufacturing, mining, tourism. Now, these sectors have the potential to generate significant foreign exchange and drive substantial economic growth. Investment in education, so we want that to happen so that we prioritize quality education and skills relevant to evolving job markets and entrepreneurship that can lay the foundation for creating and managing substantial wealth. Africa is the wealth capital of the world. All the wealth on this planet is in Africa. America is a $30 trillion dollar economy. But then guess what? It's our forefathers that has created the America we see today. It's our free labor as slaves for hundreds of years that has created the America that we see today. So if America today is the biggest economy on this planet, it is because of Africa. Okay, apart from the fact that, yes, America had no colonies on the continent, but the moment the classical colonizers were leaving, America moved in and started neo-colonizing Africa by first organizing a coup against Nkrumah. And so we all know this history. Okay, so what we are saying is that Africa is the wealth capital of the world. Africa is where the wealth is, and yet we are not enjoying the wealth. And so that is the kind of Africa we want. We want a wealthy Africa where Africans are wealthy. Yeah, we can't live on $5.5 a day. The per capita income in other countries, take America for instance, the last time I checked was $60,000. $60,000. That is per GDP per capita. So these $5.50, and then going to war against Russia and Ukraine to divert attention from the real reason why all this is happening, which is Africa's wealth. That is all it's about. Financing railway lines in Angola across there. They think we are fools, these people, or they think we are idiots, that we don't understand what is going on. All this is just about continuing to take our wealth for nothing. And so at the end of the day, our wealth is being stolen right in front of our eyes, and our people are living, ordinary Africans are living on $5.5 dollars a day. So we also therefore want a cultural shift. There's a need for a mindset change that values long-term growth, risk-taking, and innovation over immediate stability. These four-year cycles that is happening across Africa, these 4-year cycles is not working, because at the end of the day, governments only run the country for about 3 years. The last year, they are thinking about how they can be re-elected. And so it's now time to steal money so they can win the next election. When they win the next election, then we waste a lot of time on ceremonies, which are all okay, but not the real issue. And then they start again, and then they run the countries for another 3 years, and then this thing's not working. So we need economic democracy. Political democracy is fine, but it's not enough. We need economic democracy. Then we need a stock market on the continent that works. Right now we don't. So we need the stock market potential. So ordinary Africans can invest in businesses. So to summarize, I'm saying that to really create wealth from the African continental free trade area, and make Africans the beneficiaries of their own resources, we should focus on developing world-class industries and conglomerates, fostering innovation and technological advancement, attracting and retaining large-scale investments, implementing policies that support the growth of major industries, which is not happening currently, and then encouraging participation in global markets. We need to shift the narrative from poverty reduction and such things to wealth creation, because Africa can unlock its full potential, its full economic potential, and position itself as a global economic powerhouse. Thank you. So that's my addition to Brother Pigeon's very important technical presentation on the African Continental Free Trade Area. Once again, let me welcome you all. Welcome Roger, welcome Martin, welcome Brother Carrington, welcome Brother The King, welcome Sister Tapua, welcome Cephas, not sure that's your real name. Sister Shaza, welcome Brother Coco, welcome Sister Myra, welcome Sister Chizomo, welcome Brother Windhoek, welcome Brother Kama, welcome Brother or Sister, I'm not sure whether it's a brother or sister, Buhura. Amos, welcome, and then Brother Pigeon, welcome. So the time is about 10 to 7. Let's open the floor for discussion. Feel free to discuss the technical aspect or what I'll call the quality of life aspects of the African Continental Free Trade Area. So the floor is now open, and feel free to contribute. Thank you.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm speaking from Kigali, Rwanda.
Yes.
My name is William.
You are?
Williams.
Yeah, William. He says Cephas.
So that's the name of the machine I'm using.
Yeah, that's fine. So Brother William.
Williams. I wanted to jump in.
Yes.
Immediately after your intervention, so that I do not lose.
Yes, that's fine. Please.
The opportunity to.
The floor is open. Yes.
Brother Thank William, you so much.
It's very dark.
First of all, let me start by thanking you who have organized this meeting. I think the conversation about Africa's ability to trade is important, but most importantly, I think, and this is what you have just referred to, most importantly, we must address ourselves to the key question of what is it Africa is trading in? How can we trade if we don't produce? And how can we produce if we are not deliberate and intentional in building our industrial capacity? So I liked your intervention where you're talking about the need to build industries, to set up policies that encourage industries. But I wanted to actually request that perhaps we ought to be focusing about doing more than just talking about the need, but the need to build industries and deepen the conversation as to what industries, key industries that Africa should be focusing on. Because you can't build industries around everything that you need. But where is it that we have competitive advantages that we can actually marshal resources, either as single private sector players or as regional blocks or as a continent, and we actually say, we are going to build this. We're going to build this industry. I like what Dangote has done. But how many other industries like Dangote's industry, petroleum investments can be done? How come we are still importing cloths out of other countries when we grow so much cotton? How come we still have our ladies buying jewelry coming out of India and China when we have all the precious and semi-precious materials? Why are we not building a robust jewelry industry to add value to the mineral resources we have so that we can supply jewelry around the world, apart from the capacity of what can be done within the electronic space based on the resources that we have on the continent? But can we, for example, encourage a deliberate and intentional decision by our governments, either at a regional level or at a continental level, to commit resources to answering the question of how Africa can industrialize its economy going forward? Even if we look at opportunities for massive industrial activity based on our regions, you look at ECOWAS, you look at SADC, you look at the East African Community, you look at the Maghreb, and divide the continent into regional blocks and say, what industries should we drive in these particular regions? So that we then marshal resources collectively to drive our own development. I like sharing the story of China, where when China began thinking about its own industrialization, they picked over 600 different products around which they thought they must build industries. So their industrialization was not accidental. It was very specific to the level of what product they needed to build the industries around. And once that was done, the issues of location, issues of technology, issues of levels of investment, issues of technical expertise were dealt with, defined, and they looked for them and did what they did. That is why they are now the manufacturing center of the whole world. They produce more goods than nearly all the manufacturing countries put together, because they were deliberate. They were intentional. They identified the specific products around which they wanted to build industries, and they marshaled the resources to make sure that that happens. That is where I wanted to stop. Thank you so much. That's my intervention.
Brother William, thank you very much for your intervention, coming from Rwanda as it is, because as you know, Rwanda is very important for us in all this conversation because of its centrality in Africa. The leadership of our esteemed Paul Kagame. He was in Ghana, by the way. So I come from Ghana. He was in Ghana recently for the inauguration of President Mahama. So thank you very much. Yes, Brother William, we agree with you that you want us to focus on action. So one of the things we would do, and I think Brother Pigeon normally leads on this, is that we will get out the transcript for this meeting, and we will then tease out action points and what we think should be happening, like the things you have mentioned, and we will submit that to the bodies that are responsible for ensuring that the after works. So hopefully we'll hear from more people on what the way forward should be, and then, as I said, we will then identify action points. Thank you for drawing our attention to what China has done. And that means that China is an example for us to emulate. As we all know, China was some years ago. China was like a developing country like us. All of us, African countries, including China. We all went to Indonesia together in that big conference, the non-aligned conference. We're all there. China was like as poor as us. And China has shown that it can be done. And
True.
as even world-class economists have identified, what China has done is remarkable. They have done something that has never happened in the history of the world, which is to make millions of people wealthy and to lift them up from poverty to wealth. This has never happened. When these criminals came to Africa, all they did was steal our resources, denude us, steal our land, steal our diamonds. They just went on world-class stealing spree, killing people all across. I mean, sometimes it's just so sad to remember these things. But anyway, so thank you for drawing our attention to that. I think those who are interested in agriculture will agree with you. The agricultural economy, meaning that immediately African land must be put aside to produce enough food to secure Africa's food security, so that we don't depend on anyone for food.
To feed the world.
Go on.
To feed
Yes,
the world.
but, yes, but Brother William, let's feed ourselves first, and then we'll worry about the world later, because we are so generous, we are so kind. You know, they took our generosity for granted, and so on. Anyway, the time is 7 o'clock. Let me play the African anthem, and then we'll continue. I see there's a hand up, and then we will take another presentation. So let's hear the African anthem. It is in the African language. It's not in English, so let's it's in Swahili, our African language. So let's hear it, and then we'll continue the discussion. Thank you.
Let us all unite and celebrate together.
Oh, it's in English.
The victories won for our liberation. Let us dedicate ourselves to rise together to defend our liberty and unity. All sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky. Let us make Africa a tree of life. Let us all unite and sing together to uphold the bonds that frame our destiny. Let us dedicate ourselves to fight together for lasting peace and justice on earth. All sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky. Let us make Africa the tree of life. Let us all unite and toil together to give the best we have to Africa, the cradle of mankind, the font of culture, our pride and hope at break of dawn. All sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky. Let us make Africa the tree of life.
Thank you very much. That was the African anthem, the AU anthem. Some say it's like a dirge, but that's all we have. So until a new one comes up, we will play it. Thank you very much. Brother Pigeon, your hand is up. Yes. Dr. Mike, welcome. Brother Pigeon, yes, unmute yourself. Yes.
I want to respond some few things. One that has been raised by Brother William, I think so, is that, of course, priority areas have been identified by various countries. And continentally, we have identified key priority areas, which include industrialization, as you've talked about, the issues to do with policy and regulatory frameworks, and there are also issues to do with popularization of FTCA to especially small and medium enterprises, and transport and logistic connectivity. Of course, if you check, for example, if you go to a country like Burkina Faso, Burkina Faso has actually identified their top priority areas, especially issues to do with, if you come here, you check issues to do with animal products, cotton, oilseed, fruits, and vegetables. Those are their top 5. So countries have actually gone ahead to develop priorities. The key thing that you talked about that we need to be concerned is, the current states as they are in the smaller states pose a challenge a bit, because the African countries are making agreement with various external countries. For example, Kenya signed an agreement with the EU, which is called EPA agreement. Kenya has been pursuing an agreement with the US, which is called STIP, which is Strategic Trade and Investment Plan. There has been AGOA in so many countries in Africa. And these agreements sometimes allow those countries to set up their industries in the continent. As you know, and it's a concern that was raised by some members here, is as we go to do the trade, whose product are we trading? The product might be from the continent, but who is the owner of the product? As you've mentioned, Brother Kwame, Kenya top priority exports include coffee and tea. The tea sector in Kenya is actually fully controlled by multinational companies like Finlay's, Unilever, and the rest. As even Kenya was doing the launch of the tea to actually Ghana, despite of us having the what you call KTDA, which is Kenya Tea Development Authority, the outgrowers, those who do their tea in small scales, you realize the majority of tea that might be exported will be actually tea that come from multinational companies. So through these agreements that various African states make with external bodies like other countries that enable those countries to come over and set their industries here, we might end up, as you've said, actually doing a trade in the continent, reducing barriers and making incentives for trade. But the companies that will be trading the products, for example, cotton or even chocolate, the chocolate, I think it's chocolate companies and things from West Africa, cocoa and the rest, you realize that it's the Western multinational companies in Africa that will be doing the trade. So something that is very essential to our commitment as a continent is that we must equally pursue, and I think so Dr. Brother Williams was talking about, governments must intentionally ensure that they build the capacity of Africans to move from small businesses to multinational business to corporations, so that then they can benefit in the free trade area and free trade agreement. Without that, Africans will just be workers in a multinational and multi-billion investment plan that they'll only receive labor fee than the whole amount that they need to receive. So those are key things that are going on. But we must also be conscious of the competition of Western or other products that come from outside the continent in terms of their quality and in terms of their pricing, competing with products coming from the continent. So all these also will be factors for consideration. For example, a trader might not want maybe to buy a shoe from Kenya that goes at maybe $100, while a shoe from the same shoe maybe from China or from Europe will be coming at around $50. So modes and issues, which is the cost of production like electricity, power, and oil and fuel, the transportation logistics, must be intentionally and deliberately be worked on by the government to ensure that the final product is cheaper enough to be affordable than making the cost of production to be expensive that will make that product final price also be expensive. Hence, it will not get much market as needed. That's the little I know from my political aspect and some little thing, but economists like yourself will understand this better. Thank you.
Yeah, Brother Pigeon, thanks for bringing to our attention that countries have identified their product priorities. So that's in line with what Brother William mentioned. And so then what it then means is that you will help us or lead us to come up with those national priorities so we can have a rationalized list. And then we can be part of that conversation by writing to the respective authorities and saying that, and as Brother William said, how are you going to divide the continent into some kind of industrial blocks where via comparative advantage we can focus. In terms of prices, when a company company produces in terms of its size, so when it serves a bigger market, it is able to produce at a lower price. And that is why the Cold War that happened before was actually a Cold War over market size. It was about fighting over markets, especially the African markets. So currently, we are like the antelope that the predators are all fighting over, so they can get their shares. And it's about who gets the lion's share and so on. But the antelope itself, nobody cares about its welfare. And so that is what the African Continental Free Trade Area should change. Now, here is the thing. Personally, I don't believe anything I'm hearing from national governments when it comes to businesses. You notice how they always talk about small, medium-sized businesses? What do they really mean? That is a code. It's a code for saying that leave the leave the market for the corporates, the global corporates alone. That's what they are saying. They are saying that we Africans must be content with being small businesses, we should be content with being medium-sized businesses. We shouldn't think in terms of being global brands. No, that is not for you, Africa. That's not for you. You should not even think about that. That's what they are telling us. But that's exactly what we shall do. And that's exactly what we are prepared to think. And you see, the reason China is interesting, the reason I think you all know that the reason that American multinationals went to China, because remember that the industrialization of China, yes, the Chinese Communist Party identified specific products, but remember that it was American capital also in China that propelled China's industrialization. So what am I getting at? As Brother William identified, it was the government, if you like, that identified the products. What does that mean? It means for China, it means national planning. But then guess what? The IMF and the World Bank are past masters of lies, deceiving African government. In fact, Museveni has grown tired of their lies and has made speeches in the past just saying, let's ignore these people, because he knows. And their job is to tell African countries not to plan. So for those of you who know the history, up until around 1966, thereabouts, and even beyond, maybe up until 1979, when you talked about economies, governments thought about planning the economy, and then after 1979, given the new liberal revolution that transformed the world through Thatcher in the UK and Ronald Reagan in America, a new, if you like, perspective was born, not so new in the sense that there was then an emphasis on decentralization, deindustrialization. Budgets should be balanced, and so on and so forth. And what they were really getting at is that national governments, like the government of Ghana, in setting up industries, were principally challenging multinationals who wanted to keep the market for themselves. So if for instance, Kenya the Kenyan government decides to back coffee production through the government, that will mean is that the current domination of global corporates in Kenya will cease, and they don't want that. So what they have done is that they are now saying that you should have free markets, and free market, as you know, is a complete fraud. There's no such thing as a free market. What they really want is to dominate our markets. They don't want us to be producers. They don't want us to industrialize, and that is what this is all about. So, in drawing our attention to China, Brother William is reminding us that if the African Continental Free Trade Area is going to work, it means there has to be continental planning. That is the point. Now, for continental planning to work, we need to have a continental body that is authorized to do that. And that means that the heads of state, I don't know if that is happening already, Brad, the pigeon, you can tell us. The heads of state must cede some of their powers to the African AU Commission to be able to have the power to do some of these things. So thank you very much. And let's hear from others. So, Brother Pigeon, thank you for your intervention. AGOA and all those agreements, they must all be basically repudiated. The African Parliament, which is a law-making body for the continent, must meet and just pass a law and say, look, we repudiate all these national agreements. From henceforth, all we will have is the AU signing agreements on behalf of the entire continent, not these divide and rule tactics. Yeah, where is it? Because it's all divide and rule, isn't it? Where they pick off one country against another, and it's just a mess. But ultimately, the question is, how will the African Continental Free Trade Area make Africans wealthy? Not reduce their poverty. We are not interested in poverty reduction, please. We want to be wealthy. Therefore, how is it going to help us create wealth so that we are wealthy Africans? That is the issue. Brother the King, your hand is up. Please proceed. Thank you.
No, in your delivery, I've been able to find solution to the question I wanted to ask.
Okay, yeah. Well, remind us. We don't know what the question was, and I don't know what the delivery had. The delivery answered this. So share with us.
Okay, my question was, when you come to Ghana, you realize that most of the industries here belongs to the Lebanese and the Indians and other countries as well too. Majority, and they even control almost about 3/4 of our economy. So now, for me, when the question of African Continental Free Trade came inside, I was asking that, okay, with all these companies in this country, when they say the GDP has gone high, it doesn't reflect in the pocket of the average Ghanaian. It actually goes to these industrial players who do not belong to this country or who send their money back to their homeland. So how does this really benefit we, the indigenous Africans, who do not have all these infrastructures in place to be able to also take advantage of the market system?
Yeah. So how has my contribution answered the question, Brother Deke? You need to unmute yourself, by the way. Brother Deke, unmute yourself. You're muted by accident.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And so you made mention of the fact that we need to have planning, continental planning, and other forms of development planning as well, to which some of the leaders have to share their powers to the AU for them to be able to do that planning, which will automatically, I think, throw away some of those challenges.
Yeah. So the coup against Nkrumah, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, was also one of the reasons was that he was industrializing Ghana. Again, I don't know if we all know the history, but Nkrumah had a 7-year development plan, and at the end of the 7 years, Ghana would have been transformed into an economically independent country, and the Americans, the criminals, if you ask me, at the time, didn't want any of this. How dare Ghana become independent? Because if Ghana is independent, and Ghana was a black star, Ghana was showing the way. Ghana was like the three wise men that were following that star in the sky to locate Jesus in the Christian Bible. Yeah, and so Ghana was like that star, and people were following the star. So if Ghana became industrialized, then Firestone in Liberia will fall, because then Liberia would say, well, why have we given all this land to Firestone in America to produce rubber, when it should belong to the African people? So again and again and again, so you can see the uranium in Congo. What if Africans start to use the uranium themselves? Then what will happen to supply to the foreign competitors? So they really didn't want us to industrialize, but industrialize we must, and we will industrialize, against all their machinations. Nothing will stop the onward progress of Africa. Nkrumah said, we mean to be masters of our own continent, and masters of our continent we will be, however long it takes. We don't care, but all we know is that it will happen. And that for us is our consolation, that we live in a dialectical world where nobody can stop the laws of nature. You just can't do it. You can try, but it won't work. You can't stop the sun from shining tomorrow. Try, but you can't. Maybe all you do is blow up your own planet. You can't stop the sun from shining. Nobody on this planet can stop the sun from shining. The sun will shine, whether you like it or not. Africa will rise, whether they like it or not. And the days of they stealing our resources for themselves, which is what they don't want us to develop, all that will come to an end. All these criminal leaders who are not interested in our development. You see what happened in Ghana? That is what will happen to them. People will just vote them out and put in leaders that can develop the continent. Brother Carrington, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Kwame. Just a moment. I'm coming.
That's fine.
I'm here. I'm back. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, please proceed. Thank you.
Yeah. So the African continent, sorry, first, I missed the first part of the presentation.
That was a technical presentation by the Office of ACTFA in Kenya.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yes.
It was delivered on their behalf by Brother Pigeon, who, as you know, is a member of various bodies.
Yes,
of the World Trade Organization.
Yes, that support the World Trade Organization. Yes. Thank you very much, Brother Pigeon, for your presentation. And thank you very much, Brother Kwame, for your espousal of the presentation regarding the social aspects of the African Continental Free Trade Area and what we want out of the Continental Free Trade Area.
Yeah, Brother Carrington,
yes.
Just a small interjunction there.
Yes.
I'm not so much interested in the social side, but I'm more interested in the economics side, in line with economic liberation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and empowerment. I normally prefer using the word empowerment because unempowered people do not need liberation. So the first thing I would really love to talk about is synergies. And I would like to give an example of historical Europe after the Second World War and during the Second World War. There's a coal region, a region rich of charcoal, in the border of France and Germany that France and Germany, I think it's called SAR, that France and Germany had been fighting each other for several decades, if not a century, to control this region because it would then imply industrialization. They get the energy, the coal energy for industrialization. And this was one of the bases of very, very nasty wars and was one of the causes of the Second World War, essentially claiming and reclaiming these territories between France and Germany. After several 10 millions of deaths, including African lives wasted in Europe, it became clear that this was not the right way of approaching minerals control. That the right way of approaching minerals control is ensure that whoever is able to remove them from the ground efficiently gets to remove them from the ground efficiently. Whoever can process them and purify them processes them and purify them, and whoever can make them into goods and services makes them into goods and services. And this was why, this was part of the reason why the concept of the European Union was invented, to allow free movement of goods and services within the continent, so that instead of countries competing for resources, you have companies competing for resources in a market. And at scale, what will happen is that you will find that the best processor of Ugandan groundnuts, for example, is a Tanzanian company. The best processor of Kenyan minerals is a Gabonese company or a Ghanaian company. And over time, this resettlement and rearrangement of the continent will improve, will create wealth for everybody, deliver prosperity and power. We are in the wrong notion because of the notion of the nation state, where countries are trying to fight for as much territory as possible, fight for control of as much territory as possible, because they know the minerals that are associated with these territories. And a lot of the problems of the continent come from this very, very simple fact that even communities within nations, within nation states, are fighting for control of minerals with the nation state itself. So we are still in that, what I'd like to call a poverty mindset, where you want to control the resource. The question is not whether you can control the resource. The question we should be asking is who can exploit the resource. And it could be a company that has been formed in Nairobi, but has Ghanaian, Algerian, Egyptian, South African, Zimbabwean members who can exploit that mineral efficiently and build technology, products, and services out of that specific mineral. This is why it is important that free movement of goods is followed by free movement of human capital, so that brains are able to go into areas where there are minerals, brains are able to go to areas where there are opportunities for technological, scientific development. This is important. We are running the wrong competition in the continent, and this is partially why we are stagnant. Instead of country A and country B fighting over control of given minerals, or country C taking control of the minerals of country D indirectly using companies, extractionist companies, we should be thinking about this other mode of operation, guided by a much stronger African Union and a Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat in Ghana. So thank you very much. We need a change of philosophy. Thank you.
Yes, Brother Carrington, thank you very much for your contribution. If you don't mind me saying that you noticed how the language you used the language of competition, and so on. And very interesting. That's the language of the market. And yes, we've been told that The reason Africa hasn't developed is because Africa's markets are not liberated and decentralized. I can tell all of us here, you can quote me anywhere, that Western firms or global multinationals are not interested in competition. The World Bank has just been lying to us. They deceive us. They think, you see, these people must think we are fools. They just come and lie to us. They look us in the eyes and lie to us. Multinationals are not interested in competition. They are interested in domination. They want to dominate markets. If it is a supply of resources, they want to dominate the supply. And sometimes they dominate the supply because they want what they'll call for national security reasons, which means that the supply of those resources must never be in doubt. So the Suez Canal, for instance, some countries will see it as national security issue. So they must have warships there to make sure that it's always open for trade and so on. So I just want to interject there and say that the language of competition is great, but we know that they are not interested in competition. What they want is domination. So I think that yeah, I see you want to come in, so let me pause so that you can come in and I can continue. Yes.
Yes, partial agreement, partial disagreement as usual. First, where I agree. I agree that with respect to extraction of resources, it doesn't matter from Africa, from anywhere where there are weak states. Europe is not talking, and the United States and China, they're not talking about competition. No, they're not talking about competition. They want to get our minerals as raw and as cheap as possible. And they will do anything possible to get these minerals that way. What these people have been very, very clever in doing is that recognizing the power of the free market. The power of the free market internally in their countries. They let companies that are inefficient to collapse and companies that are efficient grow. And then these companies that are efficient are protected by their respective states. The reason Africa is really struggling is that how weak states are unable to protect the local companies. For example, the United States did not sit down to design Facebook. It did not sit down and have a council of the CIA and the National Security Agency to design Twitter. But once Facebook, Twitter, Apple became billion-dollar, trillion-dollar companies, they became a state concern. So they let the market operate, then the market chooses winners, then now the state kicks in.
Brother Carrington, can I come in there? I think the points you're making are very important. So let's leave that detailed conversation for another session on markets, because I think it's a very important discussion we should have. I don't believe anything you are telling us, because I've looked into this as an economist, and it's just a pack of lies. But I hear you.
I believe everything I'm saying. But
because you see, the example you are giving affirms that the private sector is not the engine of economic growth, which is one of the lies they tell us.
The government acting with the private sector is the engine of economic growth. We must never be confused about this. I agree.
Yeah, Brother Carrington, but you see, again, when you say the government, do you mean the executive government? Do you mean the judiciary? Do you mean the legislature? Or do you mean
all three arms?
Do you mean organizations or industries are controlled by, say, the army? Because some of the new technology were created within the armed forces and their businesses. So anyway, as I said, that is on the discussion we can have separately, because I
Yes.
think you have thrown up some very interesting some very interesting things that we need to discuss, and they will come up because of the fact that the African Continental Free Trade Area will, as you've shown, bring up these issues, and so we have to, if you like, face them squarely, and between us as Africans, have this discussion and have a clearer idea about it. I mean, as an African, trained as an economist also, yeah, I, I would say, for instance, that the failure of South Africa has been their belief in this free market nonsense. But anyway, that's, as I said, it's a different story, which we'll come to later. Brother Carrington wants to come back again. Yes, Brother Carrington, come back, and then Brother Pigeon will make, I think he wants to make a comment on the technical area, and then Brother Coco, whose hand has been up for a while, will then speak. Yes, Brother Carrington.
Yes, just a quick comment. And
Very important comment. Yes.
people who are familiar with the South African economy, please feel free to correct me. I might be wrong. South African economy has stagnated and come into a grind for similar reasons to the Kenyan economy. And it is this thing called the SOE, the state-owned enterprise. The energy producer in the country of South Africa is a state-owned enterprise which has been protected under basically monopoly or monopolistic.
Brother Carrington.
This is the truth.
Brother Carrington.
And
Brother Carrington, as I said,
yes,
you've raised some really important issues, which I think should be the subject of separate discussion. You see, there's a lot in there that we can discuss. So let's leave that for another session, and let's focus on the Continental Free Trade Area for today, and then we can look about industries within that maybe another time. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yes, but just to add that
Okay.
the Continental Free Trade Area might not work, and this is why it is important.
It might not work.
Yes.
Okay.
If African states begin to choose winners, the problem with choosing winners is that you are likely to see your nephew as a winner rather than the most competent person as a winner. And Kenya came out of a corrupt state socialist system. The problem with state socialism is that if it is run competently, it works very, very fast. If it is run incompetently, it fails very, very fast because it concentrates power on the state. And when the state begins to hire your nephew, your niece, the friend of a friend to run these state-owned enterprises, they basically grind into a halt and then slow down the entire economy, weaken the private sector, and then the weakening of the private sector weakens the state, which further weakens the state-owned enterprises. If the African Continental Free Trade Area begins with African states trying to choose winners in their local economy, the system will not work because it is supposed to be an African continental free trade area.
Yeah,
that's all I was trying to.
Yeah, and hold on, brother Pigeon, brother Carrington. I agree with everything you've said. Just so you know, the state socialism thing is so Richard Wolff, who's an American economist, agrees with everything you said there, and he would say that that was the old argument. State socialism didn't really solve the problem. But in the case of Ghana, the reason Ghana went via the part of state socialism was because when Nkrumah opened the economy for the private sector to help develop the economy, they were not interested in developing the African economy. That's the reason Nkrumah went for state ownership. It's not because it wasn't out of any ideological commitment. It was out of a pragmatic decision. Yeah, but people don't know this. Yes, Nkrumah opened the economy, invited the whole world to come and invest in Ghana. They were not interested. You see, this is what we need to understand, that foreign capital is not interested in developing Africa for Africans. And I think you all know that in the case of South Africa, the reason they poured capital in there was because of the Europeans that were living there. It was not for the benefit of the Africans. So that is something we need to keep in mind. But like everything you've said there, I agree totally with you. Richard Wolf agrees with you. And I said, let's have a discussion about another time. Yes, Brother Pigeon. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to say that common markets have worked all over. The EU has the biggest common market, and it works for the EU. The government is not in the business of doing business. Business are run by private sectors and private companies. The tea in Kenya is not owned by government. The shoe that will be sold in Ghana is not owned by government. The oil that will be coming from Dangote farm is not government, even though it has shares. The cocoa from wherever it will be coming is somebody who has invested in that. And therefore, the aspect of government into the trade is not that clearly as IFTCA. The trade is open for Africans to trade, because there's an African who has a company for maybe, for example, meat company in Uganda who want to export his meat to Kenya.
Hold on. Brother Pigeon, hold on there. You see, that is the issue that I think we are driving at. The issue is not trading. The issue is industrialization. You see, so that is what we are concerned about here. That if we are talking about trading, Brother William has raised it earlier. What are we trading if we are not producing anything? We are just trading multinational products, and that kind of Africa continental free trade area will not work for us. You see,
Brother Kwame.
Yes, Brother Pigeon.
Yeah, I'll state it again very clearly, is that the fact that we either trade multinational products is not the mistake of Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement. Is within the state decisions. And as you have seen, and what I posted before, the states will be a challenge, not that will make it impossible, will be a challenge because states make state agreements with the other states or other bodies outside. For example, I've mentioned, the Kenyan government is making a trade agreement with the US. As it makes trade agreement in FTCA, it makes trade agreement with the US. China or Ghana has a bilateral trade agreement with either France or whatever, you see? And these bilateral trade agreements have so many texts in it. For example, key argument in Kenyan trade agreement with the US was...
Yes, Brother Pigeon, sorry to interject again. You've made that point and we've acknowledged it. Then, therefore, the point is that if these national agreements are going to frustrate the continental free trade area, then what is the African Parliament and other global African continental institutions going to do about it? You see, so we say, so yeah, we've heard you. We acknowledge that there's AGOA, there is the EU agreement, and so yes, we've heard you. But then, what should we do? And the issue is that because it's a continental matter, it can't be dealt with by national governments. It has to be a continental body dealing with a continental free trade area. And currently, we don't have a continental government. You see, so we hear you. Okay. Can we hear from Brother Coco, who's had his hand up? Brother Mike, Dr. Mike also has his hand up. But Brother Pigeon, feel free to make any final comments before I move to Brother Coco. Thank you.
I'd like to mention that,
yes.
I'd like to mention that the EU do not have one government politically, but the EU market is working for EU. EU exports from Africa, and Africans are selling to EU. The issue is the products that is needed. If products is on demand, you'll have to request for it. For example, the EU depends on flour from Africa, avocado from Africa, mango from Africa. The Arab states are depending on meat from Africa. And therefore, it's not that the Arab state will block their market because Africa are exporting to them. They need the market because market is about the demand. And it only need protocols. And these things are mentioned here in terms of protocol for trade agreement, protocol for services, protocol for competition, dispute resolution. Those are only mechanisms, technical mechanisms that are needed for trade to flow. Issues to do with the currency, tariff, non-tariff barriers, standards of goods. Once those are harmonized, anybody can trade their goods wherever it is. We only look at Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement as a continental market that can enable marketers or Africans to trade across the border. For example, not even for multinational, even somebody who's doing his own poultry of maybe 10 crates of eggs today, find it's very hard to cross it over to Uganda. But because you have also East African common market, it might be easier. But if it is not there, even if you are one cow, you cannot cross it over to Uganda because of these protocols. Once the protocols are ratified, the open market enables every African to trade. But as you've said, and it has been stressed, the need for what you call special economic zones by governments to create special economic zones and the need to industrialize Africa is very important in ensuring that industrialization is towards African owning the industries so that they can fully benefit on this. That's also something I must say that I agree with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Mike, can you just hold on for us? We'd like to hear from you. Brother Coco had his hand up first, so let him speak, and then Dr. Mike, you can then come in. Brother Coco.
Thank you.
So long to get to you.
Yeah, I think this is a topic that everyone wants to contribute in, and it's a topic that everyone has a great interest in, and understandably so. I want to have a question for Comrade Piglin before I do my own submission. He keeps talking about the special economic zones. Can you briefly explain what those are and how Africans can benefit from them, please?
Kenya has started developing what you call special economic zones, which means you open a field and develop facilities necessary, for example, maybe put roads, put water, put electricity accessible. Then people can then set up or put buildings where people can own up an industry. So you rent an industry to produce whatever you want. Those special economic zones have been under the program of Kenya to develop around 30 or 50 of them. They have started developing one or two in each and every county in Kenya, for example. They go, for example, in a county which is like a state in Kenya for me, for example, Homa Bay. And they know Homa Bay County or a state in Kenya has potential for pineapple, potential for sweet potatoes and cotton. So in the special economic zone, they develop facilities that are necessary for those products in that county so that that county can be able to produce that. That is a model that has been working in Kenya, but it's 2 years old in developing what you call special economic zones, which means zones for economic that focus on special needs of each area, so that those areas can fully tap to that potential by ensuring that facilities that initiate production in that area is fully equipped by government, which I've said, road, cost of electricity, and everything else that's needed, and water, and all that is needed, and then set up some structures where people can come and set up, just like renting a space to do your industry, because already the products are within the area. You just need a space to run your industry, and government build some structure for that so that you just go like in the market, just lease a place in a market to do your market. That's the concept of special economic zone that's being developed and run in Kenya.
All right. Thank you, Brother Coco. Just hold on a moment. Brother Andrew, speaking from Rwanda, has made a point that the special economic zones that Brother Pigeon has talked about, interesting though they are not for us the issue on the continental level. On the continental level, what Brother Andrew has specifically said, but indirectly and directly so, is that we need our continental leaders to demarcate the whole of Africa, not national spaces, but the whole of Africa into special economic zones. That is what we need. Brother Coco, can you continue with your
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think what a pigmin is referring to here is what is called is a concept called fast expanding economies or fast expanding markets. So you take one industry which works best and then create all incentives for that industry and then ensure that all the other industries benefits from that industry doing well. It's something like that. But the concept of special economic zones has been misused largely. So you have to be careful when you use that word, Brother Pigbin, because most of the time is for investors, especially foreign investors who come in and expect to pay low taxes.
It's for criminals.
Yes, for criminals. So you have to be careful with how you use that word. But that's all right. The way you are understanding it, it's more of how do we pull different industries forward? How do we stimulate the economy using the fastest growing industry in that economy? Then coming to my submission, I was really happy, gladdened by Brother William what he said before, to say Africans have to look at what is best for them, what are they good at. But I have also put in the chat a lecture by the professor Howard Nichols from the university in the Netherlands, who challenged or actually exposed, he was the first one to expose how neocolonialism works against the Africans and why that is the case. So delving into that, I will have to remind all of us here that Africans have up until now been producing what they don't consume and consuming what they don't produce. That is a problem with us as Africans. So by accelerating our focus onto economy without addressing that fundamental problem is actually just elevating neocolonialism to a different level on the continental scale, because we continue to export stuff from abroad. We're supposed to be looking at the industries within our countries and making sure we put them, or make sure we get them to get the markets in those other countries. So right now they are busy looking at bureaucratic things. As we said, Brother Pigbin, you talked about the standardization, the standards and everything else. All those things will fall in place when the Africans are already trading. I can't see why we have to wait for that to happen, because we can trade, right? We just need to trade. We need to know. I looked at Moroccan economy some time ago, I think 2021, when we first started with the new economic, Pan-African agenda. Morocco was trading about 16% only with the Africans. Majority of its trade is external, is with the Europeans, is with France, is with Spain, is with China. And the way Moroccan economy is based is on the Mediterranean, which is a territory which lots of investors like. And Moroccan economy is producing planes now, producing cars.
Sorry, Brother Coco.
Yeah.
Sorry to interject. Because of the time, can you speak for the next 2 minutes so that we can hear from Dr. Mike? Because we only have 7 minutes left.
Thank you. I'll do that. I worked in Lesotho, as some of you might know. And from there, we were part of AGOA. And under AGOA, what Lesotho was doing, Lesotho has lots of firms, and those firms are producing clothes for the American market. And where are those inputs coming from? The inputs are coming from outside Africa. Why are we not importing or taking those materials, the cotton from Ivory Coast or even Kenya or any other country which has a climate for cotton? These are the stuff that we need to start looking at. We need to be focusing on what are the synergies, what are the industries that we can put together to work. So far, Africans have continued the project which was implemented by Leopold and the others in 1884, the Berlin Conference. And we are still commercialized to be just a source of inputs for their firms. The industrialization that happens outside Africa. We need to think about bringing that into Africa. And we continue to import expensive stuff from abroad. So tell me, how are we correcting that deficit? We need to deal with that. Self-reliance. Otherwise, nothing is going to work if we continue at the same pace that we are going right now. Those are the fundamentals that we should be focusing on. Thank you.
Rokoko, thank you. I agree with you. They are just wasting our time for nothing. All this wasting of time it's just because they are liberal and conservatively. They're not really interested in our development, these guys. But Dr. Mike, please come in. We'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you so much to the panelists, and thank you, Chair, for your presentation. And apology a bit, I got late a bit in getting to conversation. Just two things I wanted to highlight that you clarify for us probably in the future. And also, I would really suggest that if you can make the presentation and resources of this forum available to some of us, especially we that came in, so that we can really digest it for future webinar. Now,
Dr. Mike, can I answer that now before you continue? So our secretariat is led by Brother Pigeon, who you heard from earlier. So if you drop your contact in the chat, he can contact you and he'll make that available to you. And,
okay.
and also all our recordings are on YouTube, and he will share all that with you. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I just wanted a bit of clarification on the alignment or integration of some of these regional and sub-regional economic initiatives, into the wider plan or strategy for the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement. In West Africa, we have this ECOWAS initiative, Economic Community of West African States, and which Ghana is part of. And then we also have sub-regional in West Africa. We had the Mano River Union, kind of initiative between Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. I'm originally from Sierra Leone. I live in the United Kingdom. But I know that sometimes there seems to be disjoint in policies and initiatives between these economic bodies. So how can we take on board their intervention, their policies, to integrate them into the wider Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement?
Okay, I think that's a technical question that Brother Pigeon can answer. Brother Pigeon, maybe you can contribute to that question, yeah? Because I think it's a technical question.
Okay. Yes. I think the biggest problem we'll be facing is if we actually have to realize African Free Continental Trade Agreement, we need actually to do away with the regional trade agreements. Because if you look, for example, the EU trade agreement, you don't have again the so-called whatever West Europe, whatever Europe agreements. But then you are not stopped from creating sub-regional agreement as long as they speak to the mother agreement. For example, the Africa Free Trade Agreement will still in one way be regulated by what you call the WTO agreements on trade. For example, transparency, issues to do with the traceability. So they borrow on that because they are sub-regional aspects. So ECOWAS and the rest must also be able to ensure that even if they develop ECOWAS, it speaks to the main continental agreement so that it doesn't deviate from that. Because if they deviate and they are signatories of the continental agreement and their agreement policies of ECOWAS and the REV do not speak to that agreement, then it becomes an issue. Some of the regional blocks are based on also common commodities and common products. For example, East Africa trade almost common products. So they are able to come up with the policies that regulate common product. But yes, as you've said, the regional blocks will still be a challenge to us, the AFTC as well. Thank you.
Brother Mike, you want to come back on that? Dr. Mike? All right. If not,
okay,
then,
that's a good answer to that. But it's not so simple as he had mentioned it. We really need to be detailed, because these sub-regional and regional economic initiatives could be a stormy block to really realize the major ambition of African free trade initiative. I think we need to really focus on those issues. How. Well, thank you for that brief comment.
Yeah, but Brother Dr. Mark, I thought that is what Brother Pigeon is saying, that these regional agreements are a hindrance, so they need to be dealt with.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think you are agreeing.
And how can
with
how can we deal with them? In a major policy document, how can we really deal with them?
Okay. Have you put your contact in the chat? Do so that Brother Pigeon can contact you so we can have this discussion. If we need to, which we have in the past, we'll set up a technical committee and interested people can join, and then a CSG we can work something out. But
okay.
Again, Brother Pigeon leads on this. Brother Pigeon, please, any announcements? It's 8 o'clock, so we can bring the meeting to a close. what I would say to members is that for those of you interested, we will be our topic next Saturday will be on Agenda 2063, which is about politics. Thank you. Yes, Brother Pigeon.
Thank you very much, Brother Kwame, and for the members who have participated on this. Thank you very much. And yes, we do appreciate your presence as well. And Brother Kwame have already given, of course, the agenda for the next week. And therefore, I'll only like to announce that these recordings will be available on every Tuesday. And they are available on our YouTube channel. And those who have shared their contact, please do so that I can be able to add you to our broadcast list, where you can get updates of our recordings anytime they are ready. And next Thursday is part of our main class where we do discuss and read the philosophy and ideology. We are actually a philosophical and ideological class, which is consciousm, philosophy, and ideology by Kwame Nkrumah. So get in touch. We can add you in terms of our broadcast list to get in touch with our classes every Thursday. And there are many other things we are still doing. We like also to inform you that we have a Pan-African library, and feel free to get in touch also if you want to be part of the Pan-African library. I didn't have much to say, Brother Kwame, from this. Maybe that's enough for now.
Thank you. So I'd like to acknowledge Uhura Queen, who I didn't acknowledge before. I'd also like to acknowledge, I think I've acknowledged everyone. Yeah. So thank you very much. Please feel free to join us next week. As we've already said, our agenda for next Saturday is Agenda 2063. If you can speak on that topic or know anyone who can speak, please get in touch with Brother Pigeon so that we can put you down for speaking on the topic. That is it. Thank you all for coming. Have a